This isn't just another Blender tutorial. This is a complete hot surface modeling course packed into one video. By the end of this guide, you'll have designed a professional grade monster truck, fully textured, rendered, and ready to upload to your portfolio. You're going to learn how to design a clean hot surface forms, apply texture the smart way, set up the cameras, and render like a pro. To speed up the workflow, I'll be using tools like Box Cutter, Matrix X, Decal Machine, and Machine Tools. But don't worry, you can still follow along using free alternative like Cover and Image as Decal add-on. Now, without wasting a second, let's start modeling. First, we are starting with a wheel. It is always the best place to begin when designing a vehicle. I'll add a cylinder and set the vertices count to 80. This gives us a nice, smooth, high-resolution surface. Then, I rotate it 90 degrees on the y-axis, scale it up, and flatten it slightly on the x to get that tire profile. Now, let's apply Shade Auto Smooth and don't forget to apply the scale. Jumping into edge mode, I'm selecting the both front and back edge loop just by Alt plus left clicking on the edge loops. Then I'll add a small chamfer to soften the sharp edges. Now for the next step, I select the both faces and press I to insert it. Then I scale them along the x-axis and I right click, go to loop tools and hit bridge. This fills in those gaps beautifully. With that being done, I select both new face loop and press I key twice to perform an individual insert. Once it looks right, press Alt plus E and choose extrude along normals. Keep the extrusion subtle, just enough to give the tires some nice grooves and detail. Now, using machine tool, I simply mirror the changes to the other side. Super efficient. Next, I'll add a loop cut at the center and rotate it slightly on the X. This helps us building that striped tire pattern. Then I bevel those new edge loop to create separation. Finally, I select this face loop, insert one more and extrude again, just like before. Since we mirror the model, all the changes on the left automatically appears on the right. Now I'm adding another loop cut at the center. This time I'm enabling proportional editing by pressing the O key. When I press S to scale, you'll notice a soft gradient circle. Use the mouse wheel to adjust its size. I gradually reduce the circle each time I scale, which helps us form a nice curved profile for the tire. Once the shape looks right, I bevel the center loop just with a few segments to give it that extra softness. To really smooth it out, I'll add a bevel modifier and I'll set the segments to 2 and keep the width something like 0.2, or you can just bump it up to 0.8 with 3 segments for even softer, more polished look. Now for the next step, I select the inner face loop and duplicate it, then scale it slightly inward. If your viewport started lagging like this, just disable the bevel modifier temporarily. Alright, with the new geometry selected, press P and choose selection to separate it into its own object. Now, select the separated piece, go into face mode, press A to select all, scale it up just a bit, and press the / to exit isolation mode and bring the full view back. Then press Alt plus E and choose extrude along normals and extrude it outward. If you see some red shading, that just means the normals are flipped. No worries, press Shift plus N to recalculate and flip them back in. Now, let's switch to Edge Select. Grab this loop and run a small chamfer to round it off. Back in object mode, I'm adding a new cylinder. This will be our wheel. Reduce the segment to 64. Then rotate it on the Y by 90 degrees. Scale it up, but don't fill the entire tire. Leave a small gap between the wheel and the tire for realism. Apply the scale, Ctrl plus A, scale, then jump into face mode. I select these faces here and run a medium chamfer to give it some softness. Next, let's select all those top faces, go to the select menu and choose checker deselect. Set the deselect value to 5 or 6. I think 5 is okay, and selected to 3. Then extrude the selected faces. Let's take a look. Perfect. Exactly the kind of detail I was aiming for. Now to make it more interesting, I'll select the main center face, then insert it and extrude, then insert again and do one more extrusion. Add a slight chamfer to the top face for highlights. Switch to edge select, grab this edge loop and give them a subtle chamfer too. Then right click and shade auto smooth. Now let's add small intricate details. I am enabling the magnet icon from the box cutter tool so I can add a cut exactly at the center. Holding Ctrl, I snap the shape to the grid. Add a small circle, then hit V twice to enable radial array. Move your mouse to set the spacing, just enough separation to make it look interesting, then press Tab to freeze the operation and E to extrude the cut into the model. Hit Enter to confirm. Let's now mirror the detail to the other side. That looking great. I'll add another circular cut at the center and extrude it inwards. Oops, looks like we are working on the mirror side. Let's redo the cut on the cut side. This time, make it slightly larger and extrude it inside. Now, press T to enable solidify and adjust the thickness by moving your mouse. Finally, press B to bevel and hit Enter to confirm. Before we go any further, save your Blender file. If Blender crashes now, it's game over. Don't take that risk. Alright, let's get back to modeling. Let's organize the scene. Select everything we made and move it into a new collection called Wheel. Next, we'll duplicate the wheel setup. Select all the wheel object and hit Shift plus D to duplicate. Then move them all along the y-axis. Leave a small gap between the two tires. Then, and move this set further down the y-axis. Create a more extended real wheel setup. Now, let's build a simple suspension or connector. Add a cylinder. Set the vertices to 40. Move it to the left and scale it down. Stretch it on the Z to make it longer. Bring it closer to the wheel and apply shade auto smooth. Pick the scale and adjust the Z proportion until it fits naturally. Apply the scale and go into face mode. Select the top and bottom faces and chamfer them. Add a loop cut at the center and bevel it. Pull the edge downward slightly. Bevel those two and extrude them inward. Now, select the top and bottom edge loop and apply a small chamfer. Dissolve any unnecessary edge loops to clean up the mesh. Finally, switch to object mode and use mirror modifier to copy it to the other side. Now I feel like the cylinder is a bit too big, so let's just scale it down a little. Not too much, yeah, just like that. I'll nudge it slightly to the left too. I'll head into face mode and select the top and bottom faces of the cylinder. Let's do a quick insert and then extrude them in just to add a bit of detailing. Alright, now let's add some cables to make this thing feel more mechanical. Then I'll add a simple plane. I switch to vertex mode, select all the vertices, press M and merge them at center. Now we've got a single vertex. Now let's shape the cable path. Then I'll extrude it on the x-axis. Bring it down a bit. Move it to the right. And extrude again on the Z. Just kind of drawing out a path that goes inside the wheel. Nice and natural. Now I'll press A to select everything, then Ctrl plus Shift plus B to do a vertex bevel. I scroll the mouse wheel to increase the segments so we get a smooth curve instead of a sharp wire. Let's jump back into the object mode, right click, convert this into a curve. Once that's done, we go into the curve properties, scroll down to the geometry, and under bevel, increase the depth something like 0.08. And if it's still looking a bit rough, just bump up the resolution to 6 or 7. Yeah, that smooth it out. But wait, the cable's a little too close. I'll first nudge it slightly upward, nothing too dramatic. Now we're good to go. Now you got a nice chain cable setup going on. Alright, next I want to add a little connector just to break things up and add more details. So I'm going to drop in the other cylinder, move it right to the center, and then I rotate it on the y-axis 90 degree, scale it down nice and small, but also make it a bit wider so it feels more solid. I'll move it closer to the wheel and go ahead and apply the shader or smooth. I'm gonna bevel the front face, but wait, we need to apply the scale first, otherwise the bevel gonna act weird. We'll run a little chamfer on the end. Let's add a loop cut right in the center, move it slightly to the right, and bevel the edge as well. Then we'll extrude it out along the normals, just a nice little bump for shape. Now I'll grab these two edge loop on either side and give them a small chamfer too. Yeah, now it's looking way cleaner. Okay, now for a little cover piece, I'm adding a cube, scaling it down, making it wider, and then nudging it over to the left. I'll scale it down again to tighten the form. Then stretch it on the x-axis to cover both the connectors and the wheel part. Let's apply the scale, super important. Now I'll select these two vertical edges, and this time instead of just a basic bevel, we are going with a fillet. Basically just a bevel with a more segment is known to be a fillet. So I'll run that and increase the segment count to like 8 or 10. It gives that soft and round edge feel. Now I'll grab the top face and run a chamfer on that as well. Just adds more definition. Looking good so far. Now I'm going to mirror the change to the other side, and I think we are ready to do some cut. So I'm picking the box cutter tool, draw out a cut just like this. Then I'll hit B to bevel it and hit enter. I want to echo the same detail up on the top. So I'm starting from the side, pull it down just a bit, apply a bevel again, and confirm with enter. Alright, now let's go ahead and mirror all those new details over to the left. So first, I select everything from the right, the cables, the wheel, all of it. And then as the last selection, I'm selecting the middle cylinder to set as a mirror target. That's really a clever trick for mirroring complex spot. Super quick, super clean. Alright, now we are going to add something that kind of connect all four wheels together. So I'll just add a cube and jumping into the front view. Let's scale it down on the X, then grab it and place it right in the center. Now I'll stretch it out a bit on the Y, not too much, just enough to give that a long base loop. Actually, let's move it back a little and see how that feels. Zoom in a bit. Yeah, I'll nudge it slightly to the right and scale it down again. Make sure it sits nicely in the middle. Now let's try rotating it on the x-axis. Just give it a bit more style. Yeah, that's starting to look interesting. Turn on X-ray mode to line it up properly and maybe rotate it just a touch more. Then move it up slightly. There we go. That placement feels solid. Apply the scale now and jump into H mode. I'll grab the top and bottom edges, and I think a chamfer will better than a fillet here. Yeah, that works. Let's throw in some extra details using box cutter. I'll start the cut from the top and drag it down to get that shape I want. Just bevel that a bit and hit enter once it looks good. Now I'll press Q for smart apply to lock in all the booleans. And as usual, let's mirror everything over to the other side. There is a faster way than duplicating. This way we are just working on the one side and let mirror handle the rest. Back in edit mode, I want to add a loop cut, but doesn't seem like it's letting me. So instead, I'll just use the knife tool to draw the cut manually. Yeah, done. Now, switching to face select, I'll grab this face and press G and Z twice to move it along the. I'll add a supporting loop cut near the edge, then push the face up, and yeah, that gives a clean little shape. These edges are looking a bit too tight though, so let me slide this one by pressing G twice, just gently adjusted. Yeah, much better. Alright, next we need to connect this part to the other wheels. So for that, we'll add some small attachment. Let's just select everything we need. Hit Shift press T to duplicate it and move it to the right next to the rear wheel. Make sure it's placed exactly at the center. Yeah, line it up properly so it doesn't break the symmetry. Once that is in position, we can mirror the wheel setup to the other side. So now we've got the elements in place for both rear wheels. Okay. Now we got to connect the front and back wheels. I'm gonna grab this mesh, tab in edit mode, and use knife tool to add a manual edge right where we want the connection. Next, I'll select this face and extrude forward, then extrude one more. That second one helps us to get the clean loop edge. We can now push the geometry back until it tucks nicely into the cylinder. We could even rotate the face a bit on the X to align it better with the shape. Yeah, now move it back again. That looks way more mechanical, like a proper connection piece. Just checking the angle. Although the bottom, yeah, it needs some cleanup, so I'll jump into the edge mode, grab these two edges and pull them down slightly. Then yeah, let's actually run a bevel on them to soften the shape and give it a nice curve. To finish this bit off, I'll just apply Shadow Smooth and we are good to go. Alright, now let's move to the back. I'm gonna select these two edges and run a fillet just to smooth things out. Just checking the surface. Yeah, the top looks a bit too sharp, so let's refine it. I'll add a clean bevel up there and also grab this edge and this one to run a bevel across them. Way smoother now. Feels a lot more refined. Let's throw in some extra details using box cutter. Draw out a cut just like this. Then I'll hit B to bevel it and hit enter. Or at the bottom, yeah, it totally messed up. Let's see if a weight animal can fix it. I mean, I know it usually doesn't, but let's try it. Yep, just as expected, it doesn't help. So that means we got to do a manual fix. I'll go into vertex mode and honestly, instead of just fighting with the mesh topology, the easiest way I found, just cut the shape. So I'll press 3 for side view, press the shape visually using the box cutter end gun tool, and I just follow this exact shape, and once I form the shape, I just hit enter. This will fix the shading without rebuilding the whole thing. Simple trick, doesn't work in every case, but here it works. Next, we'll add some detail to finish this up. I'm going to make some deep cuts at the back. So let's grab box cutter and draw out a rectangle, pull it down and run a bevel to soften the cut. Now from the side view, place the 3D cursor at the center of the model and add a cylinder. Rotate it on the Y by 90 degrees, make sure it's positioned properly. Then push it inside the body and apply Shade Auto Smooth. Go into face mode, select the front face of the cylinder and run a chamfer for smooth detail. Now back in object mode, let's mirror it to the other side. Oh, looks like it mirrored to itself. So instead, select the center object first, then select the cylinder and run the mirror. There we go. Works perfectly. Now we are pretty much done with the wheel mechanism. But that back tire looking kinda single, just like me. So we could treat the rear wheel as a separated setup, but we can reuse the attachments. Just select everything, go to the top view and hit Shift plus T to duplicate, then move it backward. Make sure the attachment are centered. That part's crucial. Once it's placed, mirror the wheel to the other side. Now for the connector, we'll add a new cube, move it back, scale it on the Y to make it wider, then shrink it a bit overall, center it, stretch it wider again, and shift it to the left. Then rotate it like we did earlier and move it slightly up. Cool. Hop into the top view, adjust position and scale it on the X to align it better. That's fire. But right now it's still looking like a default cube. So let's give it some actual character. I'll use a box cutter again. Run a rectangle cut from the top back side and pull it downwards. Smart apply, then jump into edit mode. Select the top and bottom edges and run a fillet. Also grab the inside edges and give it a soft bevel too. No need for many segments because this piece isn't super noticeable anyway. Where are the changes? Now at the front, I kinda want to give it a different shape. So I'll switch to N-gon. Drag from the top and tilt it slightly left. Bring it down and end it with a bevel. Hit enter. That's something interesting. Let's select the object. Smart apply it and go into edit mode. Now I'm going to select all the corner edges and run a chamfer. See, these little tweaks, that's how we bring the attention to a design. Even a small chamfer can elevate the whole thing. Alright, now let's start building the top portion of the truck. I'm adding a cube, scaling it up, and stretch it along the y-axis. Then I'll move it up just above the wheels. Let's check the placement. Yeah, it needs to be centered. So align it on the X and scale it slightly wider to make it look more massive. Then nudge it to the center until it looks right. Now let's design the shape. Switch to edge mode. I'll press Ctrl plus B to run a chamfer, a nice big one, maybe around a 45-degree angle I guess. Looks solid. I slightly lower the entire piece to integrate better with the wheel. Next, let's refine the shape. I'll add a loop cut at the top and trying to move it up. Maybe that's a bad move. Instead, I'll pull the bottom edge a bit down. Much better. That forms a cleaner silhouette. Now, let's select the front edge and run a medium-sized chamfer. Wait, we are on the mirror side, so let's apply the mirror first, then select the proper edge and bevel it again. If the bevel looks off, don't forget to apply the scale. That usually fixes those weird bevels. Nice. Now we mirror the shape back to the other side. It's still looking like a bit blocky, right? So let's fix that. I'm selecting the rear edge of the cube and running a curved bevel around with 6 to 7 segments to give it a smooth flow. Then I bevel another edge in the front to add some soft highlights. still seeing a few harsh lines, so I'll select the entire edge loop and give it a minimal bevel just with 3 to 4 segments. Keep it small to avoid messing up the geo. The front portion is really starting to take shape. Now, let's add some life to the bottom section. I'm switching to the edge mode and bevel one edge near the bottom. It gives the surface more depth and avoid the flat, boring look. Looking at it from the side view, yeah, it's still a bit flat, so let's add some cuts. Grab the N-gun tool from the box cutter. I'll start from the top, draw a slanted line about 30-degree angle, then cross it down and go to the right and close it off, left click to confirm and hit enter. That's our cut. Now let's apply all the booleans. So select the model, press Q and smart apply. Heading back to the edge mode, I'll mark this edge as sharp so it pops visually. Then bevel the lower edge with a nice medium chamfer. Adds more dimension. Last touch. I'm selecting two of the lower edges and give them a tiny bevel with few segments. That extra smoothness really helps cell realism. The top portion is looking solid, so now we are going to start adding some details. First, I'll drop in a cylinder, move it to the front, scale it down and slide it to the left. Then I switch to side view and pull it slightly back. Apply shade auto smooth for a clean look. To match the angle of the base, I rotate it slightly on the X and hit apply scale. This is important since we are about to adding refined details. I'm going to face mode, select the front face and give it a subtle chamfer, just enough to break the sharpness. Next, I'll drop in a loop cut, press G twice to slide it, bevel those edges, then extrude out along the normals. Now back to face mode, select the same face, insert it, extrude it inward, then chamfer the inside edges, clean and controlled. Back in object mode, I'm adding another cylinder, scale it down and rotate it 90 degrees on the X, bring it down, adjust its position and scale it on the Y to make it longer. At this point, the wheels are kind of in the way, so I isolate the cylinder and the cube using the forward slash. This let me work clean. Select the face, chamfer it, insert, extrude inward, and then insert again and extrude outward. One more tiny chamfer and another insert and one final extrusion. Looks clean. Now with the cylinder still selected, I press Shift plus S, cursor to selected to snap the cursor to the origin point of the spot. Then I'll add a plane, go into vertex mode, merge it at center and start extruding. First on Y, then on Z. I'm essentially stretching out the cable path. Once done, I select all the vertices, press Ctrl plus Shift plus B and bevel it. Add more segments to smooth it out. Back to object mode, I convert this into a curve. Then extrude geometry to give it a thickness. Apply shade smooth again. The cables are a bit off, so what we can do is just move the cable slightly forward so that the cables enter into the cube. Once that's done, convert it back to mesh. Go into edge mode. Add a loop cut. Slide it down by pressing GG and switch to face mode. Select all faces, then Alt plus E and extrude along normals. Now the shading might look off, so it's very easy, just apply shade auto smooth, but in our case it's still looking weird. I don't know the fucking reason. Yeah, I think the auto smooth value is set to below the 30 degree angle, so usually below the 30 degree angle will not really smooth it out. So what we can do is just set the angle to 30 or above 30 degree. That usually fixes it. Now let's bring attention back to the cylinder. Select the front face, give it a nice bevel, insert, extrude it inward, and finish off with a chamfer on the inner edges. It had a bit realism. Next, we are going to create a giant cable. Same process as before, add a plane, merge it to center, and extrude out a vertex path. This time I extrude on the Y and push it on X a bit to get the bent cable effect. Go as crazy as you want with a curve. Once the shape is done, bevel the vertices and crank up the segment count for smoothness. Then, just like earlier, convert it into a curve, give it some thickness, maybe increase the resolution if needed. Finally, I select everything we built on the left. Select the main cube as the mirror target and apply a mirror modifier. And now we've got a full symmetric detail structure. Alright, the front is almost done, but let's refine a bit to make it more like feel solid. So first I select this connector, grab this top and bottom edges, also these 4 supporting one, and do a subtle bevel, just a small level to soften it up. That's enough. Looking at the front, it still feels like kinda empty, so let's fix that. I'll go into face mode and I was going to run a loop cut, but it's not cutting entire the model, so what you can do is just use a knife tool. So press K and manually draw a cut from this edge, angle to the connect to the nearest point. Next, switch to vertex mode, select this vertex and press GG to slide it and make the edge look straight. Now we got a separated face area to work with. Select the new face, go to the front view, hit Shift plus T to duplicate it and move it slightly upward, then press P and separate it into a new object. Now with the new plane is selected, I'll go into face mode and extrude it up a bit to give it some height. Then again select all the face and hit Shift plus M to recalculate the normals. Let's bevel all 4 corner edge for a nice rounded edge. Then select the front face, insert and extrude it inward. Don't go too far or it looks misaligned, but it still feels like it's off, so what we can do is just hit G and move it slightly. Now we got the sharp detail at the top, exactly what we need to balance out the front view. But the back looks a bit flat, which we hate. So let's fix that. First, I'm adding a small chamfer, nothing too crazy. Same trick for the front cube, so just make it pop a bit. Now, the truck still feels incomplete, so let's build something out back. I'll select the main body, going to the face mode and grab all the faces on the rear, hit Shift plus D to duplicate and slide it out, then press P to separate it. Select the new piece, switch to the face mode and extrude it out, then press S and constrain it to the Y-axis and hit 0 to flatten it. Back in object mode, I'll move it in closer, just a tiny gap, only a mosquito can fly inside. Select the bottom edge, give it a chamfer, then mirror it. Still the back feels too flat, which isn't the vibe. Let's run a rectangular cut into it and push it inside. Then bevel the cut slightly for a nice radius. Inside the space, we are stacking some detail. First, small apply, edge mode and grab the outer edges and chamfer them. Now face select, insert the inner face and Alt plus E to extrude it inward a bit and then add one more chamfer. Let's insert again and you expect that I'm going to extrude this face, not this time. Instead, I'm placing a chunk metallic object inside the opening. Hold Shift key and right click to drop the 3D cursor here. Then add a cube, shape it into something like a rectangle and scale it a bit and move it slightly down and right. Add a slightly y-axis rotation to looks way better than something slapped on flat. Fit into the space, then apply scale. We'll be refining this. Go to H mode, select top and bottom, bevel with more segments and mirror it. Now face select and run a chamfer, insert and finally extrude it inward. One more insert, extrude forward and then apply shadow or smooth. Let's add a cut to give it that mechanical feel. So draw a rectangle, rotate it on the Z, no idea why it flips that way. Move it to the right, extrude it and bevel it. That's a solid detail. Now to mirror that to the bottom, I usually just duplicate the cutter, bring it down inside, rotate it on the X and drop it in a nice place. Then select the cutter and run a boolean. That's how I just get those. Mirror detail, still not sure why the mirror modifier doesn't mirror them automatically. Might be the order of modifier. Anyway, I'll redo the mirror just in case. Let's add a few more cuts to boost the detail. First, I'll add a rectangle here and just extrude it inward. Now press B to add a radius to this corner. Hit T to add some thickness with Solidify. Now we switch the cutter type to circle. I'm drawing it right in the center of the rectangle and push it inward. Again, solidify it. Now this is turning into a nice little detail cluster. Now let's array that object. But before we doing that, we'll run a small apply so the boolean doesn't get messed up. Add the array modifier, direction off, so set X to 0 and then adjust the Y until you get nice spacing between copies. Crank up the count, nothing crazy, just a 4 that instantly add character to the design. Look how that's turning out. Next, I'll think we can go in and cut a panel into the back surface. So I'm isolating the back face and drawing a rectangle cut that follows the shape, push it inside a bit and then run a bevel to match the existing look. Feel a bit small though, so I'll scale the cutter up slightly, just larger than the array object. Nudge it a bit to the left for a better balance, then close the cutter. Now let's do a slice. I'll start the cut from here, drag it to the left, not straight. I'm following the shape to echo the same form. Pull it down, close the shape and press X for slice operation. Add a small bevel and hit enter. The slice piece doesn't really pop out, so it blends too much. A quick fix is to add a bevel modifier to the sliced piece. No need to tweak any settings. The default bevel is perfect. Now just select all the rectangle shaped object, select the main object last and mirror everything over. That's add a ton of dimension without overcomplicating the design. Even though the design looks nearly finished, the back still feels too basic, too empty, so let's fix that and add more character. First, I'm going to finish the basic blockout. I'll select all the face back here and press F to fill it into one face, then move it slightly to the Y-axis to extend the shape a bit. But we don't need too many faces here, so I'll select all of them, press X and choose limited dissolve to simplify it. It might leave behind some garbage geometry, so I'll press 1 to clean it up with machine tools. Let's add a clean edges across the surface using the knife tool. I'm cutting along the y-axis to keep it straight. Now I'll select the new edges and with proportional editing turned on, just pull it down a bit, not too much because there's already an edge below. Yeah, that feels more complete now. But there's a sharp line showing up. So I'll switch into the edge mode and select all those surrounding edges, hold Ctrl to grab nearly ones and run a bevel. Add a few segments to smooth it out nicely. One of the bottom vertices is sitting a bit too low, so I'll just slide it upward to balance the curve. Now, I'll select the bottom edge loop and gently move it up using proportional editing. Feels more controlled the way. Alright, we've finished the blockout, but we are not done. Now it's time to make things look a real bad boy. So I'm planning to add separation cut, something to break up the surface visually. I'll grab the N-gon tool and draw a shape from the bottom like this. Move it slightly to the left. Make sure the cut follows the silhouette. Then I'll fill the shape and press X. Choose slice. Hit enter and boom. We've got the clean slice. To make the slice pop, I'll add a bevel modifier. This gives some highlight. Also adding weighted normal modifier to clean up the shading. Still, I'm seeing some weird shading. So let's jump into the edit mode and yeah, there is an isolated vertex causing the problem. So just select that and delete it. Now it looks much better. Yeah, next let's detail the back connector. I'll select the area, add a rectangular cut, pull it all the way up and give it some bevel. Just subtle enough to catch lighting. Now let's stack more details. I'll add a cylinder, rotate it, scale it down a small, just like this, and push it inside the connector. Let's shade it smooth, then go into the face mode, select the front face, run a chamfer. Then again, select the same face, insert, then extrude, invert, insert again, the boring stuff like insert again, extrude, insert again, extrude, and then finish it off with a chamfer. Let's mirror it to the other side. Now, going back to the edge mode, I'll select the surrounding edges and run a bevel just to soften it and give it a nice curve. I'm seeing a red face, looks like it's flipped. Oh, interesting. Probably causing by the bevel modifier. Let's disable it and see. Yeah, this motherfucker. So I gradually reduce the bevel amount until it fixes itself. There we go. Keep it very small and it looks clean. Here's where the design starting getting dangerous. We are adding the armor. First, I'll place the 3D cursor at the center and drop it in a cube. Let's flatten it a bit. Scale it on the wider, on the X, then shrink it on the Z. Then move it down towards the rock. Slightly rotate it on the X-axis to match the angle. And don't forget to apply scale before jumping into the edit mode. Now, I'll bevel the corner with 3 to 5 segments just to give it that nice chamfered look. Push it slightly inside to integrate it with the truck. Then I'll duplicate the shape and move it towards the back. Then I bevel those 2 front edges to break the flatness. Right now it's kinda look like a keyboard, but we don't want it that wide. So I'll select these side faces, just select them all and enable proportional editing and slide it inward along the X-axis to compress the shape into a more square form. Then scale it down slightly and rotate it -50° angle on the X. Bringing it closer to the base. Let's add some surface detail to make it feel industrial. I'll insert these 2 faces and extrude them out just a tiny bit and scale them down slightly. Add a loop cut at the top and bevel that with 1 segment, then extrude it too. Finally, mirror it to the bottom for symmetry. Now, let's add some small vent hole. I'll drop it in a tiny circle, press V to enable array slicing and scroll the mouse wheel to increase the number of holes. Move the mouse to space them out nicely, then extrude to create the cut in detail. Next, let's add a smaller cut from the left. Align it to match the previous pattern and keep it symmetrical. Duplicate this cut, move it in the local Y and drop it down slightly. With both cuts selected, run a difference Boolean operation to subtract them from the armor plate. That rinse and repeat the same process to finish stacking more details into the design. Now, apply all the booleans. We are ready to array this piece. Add array modifier, set the count to 3 and adjust the X offset to space them out. This gives the armor a more aggressive function look. I don't know what the fuck I'm just talking about, Nigerian. Anyway. Let's refine the main armor block so it's not just looking floating in the space. Apply the modifier first so we can access to the bottom part. Then select the face where it connects to the truck, extrude down once, then again move the face back, push it up, then adjust it left. Just get it fit naturally into the truck structure. Select the supporting edge loops and run a smooth bevel to clean it up. Now, isolate the main armor plate and let's have more detail. Draw a rectangle shape on the surface, then bevel and cut it in. To add even more complexity, enable the cutter object from your collection. Select it and draw some n-gon around the shape. This gives a layered mechanical feel. Now, let's take a look. The armor feels connected, functioned and loaded with detail. It draws attention without overwhelming the basic design. Alright, next let's add a bit more armor. So I'll drop in a cube and put it in the back a bit, then scale it down. Let's switch to the back view, bring it to the center and stretch it out along the X. Okay, that's a big cube. Let's scale it back just a touch. Yeah, that feels about right. Then I'm gonna pull the whole cube outward a little so it pop off the surface a bit. Apply the scale, always a good habit, then hop into the edge mode. I'll select all 4 side edges and run a bevel. Nothing crazy, just 4 segments to round it off slightly. Now select the front face, give it a little insert and extrude inward to create some depth. Insert it again and this time extrude it outward. Finally, chamfer the front face to smooth it out. Apply shadow to smooth and yeah, it looks clean, but let's add more character. I'm going to run a cut now. Starting from the side and drag it down like this, kind of forming a square shape, then extrude that inward, press B to apply bevel and hit enter to confirm. Now I'll select the cutter again and start drawing some stripe details, something like this. Hit V to array it, reduce the count a little and slide it around to give it a better spacing. Now cut those into the armor. Let's hide the cutter. Oh yeah, that definitely adds some attention. To avoid any overly sharp areas, I'll add a few chamfer to soften things up. Next, I'll add a loop cut near the back and slide it just a bit. Give that a small bevel and extrude it inward. It's a subtle detail, but it helps a lot. And instead of keeping it perfectly straight, I'll just rotate it the whole piece slightly so that it gives some visual interest. Make it feel more intentional. Let's mirror the armor piece over to the other side. That whole setup give it a kind of Fury style design. Super aggressive, very industrial. I love how it's shaping up. Now let's select all the edges around the back area and run a nice chamfer across the whole thing. This just soften it a bit and make the shape feel more defined. To finish this section off, I'm going to add one more last detail, just a tiny little rectangle cut on the left side. So I'll draw it out a shape, bevel the corners a bit, round them off nicely, then hit T to apply solidify. Alright, now let's start adding some detail. I'm gonna select this front piece, grab the box cutter and draw out a shape right on the model. If your cutter isn't projecting correctly, no worry, just press Shift plus V and change it from local to nearest edge. Now when we draw, it actually sticks to the surface the way we want. But we still need to rotate the cut a bit, so I'll hit or adjust the angle until it lines up perfectly. Perfect. Now let's extrude the cut. And I think we can make this even more interesting by arraying it for some repeated details. Rotate the cutter slightly and hit G to move it up just like this to the center, and finally hit enter to confirm. That's a clean bit of detail. Alright, now let's add some small element to bring it a bit of visual interest. I start by adding a cube, scaling it down nicely, and then I stretch it up a little and tweak it on the y-axis. Now let's bring it down and push it into the surface. Yeah, that feels right. I'll move it slightly on the left so it's not overlapping with the cylinder. Now into the edge mode, I'll grab this edge, slide it back a bit. Then the top edge, also back a touch. For the bottom edge, I'll pull it forward. Good. Now let's give it a nice chamfer. Yep, that softened it up just enough. And maybe we can add a chamfer this entire edge loop. Yeah, that's looking better. Now I'll mirror it so it matches on the both sides. But let's make this look more mechanical. I'll add a rectangle cut to the front, push it inside, just a subtle insert, nothing crazy. Then give it a bevel, not a chamfer, bevel. We've got a tiny shading issue, but no big deal. Just lap on very normal and it fixes. Now I'll smart apply and switch to the edge select. Let's grab these two edges, run a bevel. That's pinching. Okay, let's add this third edge to selection. Much better. Now I'll chamfer the cutter just a bit to keep things clean. And while I am at it, I'm going to sharpen those edges so the shading pops. Next, let's add a cut on top. A long rectangle that stretches all the way to the back. And now one more detail, a circular cut on the side. I'll extrude it inward slightly and add a solidify, tweak the thickness just a touch and hit enter. Now smart apply again, hop into the edge mode, select those circular edges and chamfer them. Perfect. Time to mirror the whole thing to the other side. Actually, I think we can take this further. So let's draw a wide rectangle cut, extrude it inside and add a nice bevel for the industrial look, and then array it. I'll press V and switch the direction with X, set the count to 3 and give each segment some breathing room. Finally, apply the solidify and hit enter. That's a beautiful little detail. Alright, next let's add something up on the top to break up the flattened space. I'll grab a cube, scale it down, stretch it a bit on the Y and then pull it up. Now I nudge it slightly to the right. Yep, that's better. Apply the scale and jump into the edge mode. I'll grab this edge and pull it back just a bit. Then select these two edges and Maybe a chamfer? Actually, let's go with a bevel this time for a smooth, cleaner look. Now I'll grab this edge loop and run a small bevel, nothing too fancy, just enough to soften the shape. Perfect. Now let's mirror it over and apply shadow smooth so it blends nicely. Now for the little detail, I'm going to draw a cut here, push it inside slightly and give it a quick bevel. That's subtle, but it adds a lot. Let's drop in another cut near the bottom, keep it super thin and hit enter. Now for that curve we added earlier, let's clean it up. I'm scaling it a bit and rotate it slightly on the Z and then push it inside a little so it's fit perfectly. Next, I'll right click the curve and convert back to a mesh, add a loop cut, select the loop of the faces and extrude it outward to give it some form. Finally, apply shadow smooth to clean up the shading issues. And of course, do the same to the other side. Looking way sharper now. Alright, now it's time for tertiary details. Those small cuts that really make the design pop. I'll start from the back, right between the sliced area. I'm drawing a small rectangle, pushing it slightly inside and hitting enter. Then I'll move it a bit further and add another deep cut here. This might look tiny, but trust me, these little details add contrast in the final render. Those small recessed areas catch shadows and instantly make the design more realistic. Over the side, I'm adding another rectangle, but this time I use an array to create a repeated pattern. You can go wild here. Experiment with shapes and it's really up to your creativity. Now for the front side, I want this area to feel more attention grabbing. So I'll drop in a cylinder, scale it down, rotate it 90 degrees on the y-axis and pull it forward. It feels a bit too big, so I'll scale it down again and move it lower. Now shadow smooth and I'll scratch it slightly on the X. Apply the scale and jumping into the face mode. And grab these two faces for a tiny chamfer, nothing too heavy. I'll add a loop cut, bevel it slightly and then extrude it inward. Next, I'll insert in the face loop and then extrude it outward. That's it. Now it has a proper industrial mechanical vibe. And of course, mirror the cylinder to the other side. Now, I'll refine the bottom cylinder a little, just adding a small chamfer to the top and bottom edge loops. For this next piece, I'll add some pattern deep cuts. This time, instead of a rectangle, I'll pick a circular cut. Draw a small circle in the middle, then press V twice for radial array. Tweak the spacing until it sits perfectly, then extrude it in and hit enter. It doesn't mirror by default, so I'll simply mirror it manually to the other side. Then finally, I'll grab this main cube and this detail piece and then mirror everything over. Now it's clean and symmetrical. Nice. One last touch. I'll add a wide cut somewhere around here. Give it a small extrusion and hit enter. And there we go. Those micro details just add so much depth. Alright. Now the modeling is fully finished. Now it's time to bring the beast to a life with materials and textures. To keep it fast and clean, I'm using the Matrix X 1.5 add-on, which is the latest version. First, let me start with the tires. I'm selecting the rubber material, set the color to a dark gray, and maybe I'll tweak the brightness slightly to get that right turn, apply it with one tire. Next, I'll select the rest of the tires. Then lastly select the one which contains texture, press Ctrl plus L and choose link materials. Done. Now all tires shares the same rubber material. Now let's move on to the wheels. I'll pick the metal material, make it slightly darker, and for the imperfection I'll add edge wear. Set the edge wear color to a deep dark tone and click on generate. Looks a bit too dark. That's probably because of the edge wear. No worry, just hit fix edge wear, that will fix the problem. Perfect. Now let's also bump the roughness to around 0.6 and slightly increase the brightness. I also drop in the imperfection strength to -1. Much better. Now I'll link the same material across all wheels and their plating as well. For the bottom mechanical part of the truck, I reuse the same black metal material. This keeps the design cohesive while only using 2 to 3 core colors for clean military feel. I'll copy the same material to the rear parts too. Now let's texture the main body. I'm going for a military camo vibe. So under special material, I'll choose camo type 2. Add dirt imperfection and click on generate. Looks great. Now I link this camo material to the back section and other body parts that should share it. For the connectors and the mechanical details, I'll apply that black material again for contrast. For the giant cable, I'll reuse the same rubber material we made for the tire. For the pipe, we'll stick with the metal for that industrial look. Lastly, for the section like the back camo piece, I'll go into a face mode, select this inside face and hit Ctrl++ to expand the selection and assign a black material to break up the camo and add contrast. Now that the texturing is done, let's set up our scene and placement and background for a final render. First, I'll add a plane, scale it up big and moving it down. I'm making sure that the tires aren't overlapping with the plane, but also ensuring the truck is not floating in the air. They should just barely touch, just like a real world object sitting on the ground. Next, I'll center the plane and move it slightly back. Now, to give this render a cinematic look, we are going to create an infinite backdrop. So, before shaping the background, let's set the camera angle. I'll go for a low angle shot, almost from the ground level to make the truck feel massive and powerful. Once I got the view I want, I press page down to snap the camera to my current view. Now, the resolution isn't idle. So, I'll go into the output property and set it to, for X I set 3440 and for Y I set 1440. This gives us a wide cinematic frame, perfect for dramatic render. Back to the plane. Right now, it doesn't fill the whole view, so I'll scale it up on the Y until it fully covers the bottom area, and now we are going to cover the top section for a seamless infinite look. For that, I'm going to the edge mode, select the back edge and scale it up. I'll do the same for the side edges to give that enough spacing. Next, I'll select those two back edges and press E to extrude them upward on the Z. To smooth the transition, I'll select these three vertical edges and run a bevel with 30 to 40 segments. That creates a beautiful curved backdrop you'll see in a professional studio. Finally, I switch back to the object mode and apply Shade Auto Smooth. If we switch to the camera view, you'll see it. a perfect infinite backdrop. To really define the scale of the truck, we need something next to it for comparison. Otherwise, it's hard to understand just how massive this thing is. For that, I'm going to use a free add-on called Human Base Mesh. I leave the download link in the description. From there, I'll grab this female model, press Ctrl+C to copy it, then switch back to our truck scene and paste it in. Now, I'll move this character to the left of the truck and make sure she placed perfectly on the ground. This spot is crucial. If she floating, it instantly break realism and make the scene looks unpolished. Next, I'll rotate her slightly on the Z-axis so it looks like she's looking at the truck. Then I'll fine tune her position and scale until it feels natural in the shot. Spend a few minutes here. This small adjustment really helps sell the scene. For the modeling texture, I'm not going with the skin tones or anything fancy. Instead, I'll add a simple grey metallic material. This not only keeps it minimal but also blends nicely with the industrial theme of the truck. For the backdrop color, I'll stick with a static light grey and set the roughness to 1, which keeps it smooth and professional. Let's switch to cycle render for a quick check. This might seem like we got a perfect lighting, we'll talk that about in a second, and overall, it's perfect. Now the truck feels massive and grounded, and our composition looks cinematic. Now here where most people messed up, the camera focal length. By default, blended camera is set to 50mm, but this isn't always ideal for a cinematic shot, and a lot of people use 35mm for a wide angle view. But in this case, it actually makes the truck feel smaller and give too much importance to the background. That's not what we want. Instead, I'm cracking the focal length up to 280mm. Yes, this zooms in a lot, but here's the trick. I pull the camera way back until the full truck fits into the frame. This does two things. 1. Compress the perspective, make the truck looks absolutely massive. 2. Minimize the background, keeping the focus entirely on our subject. Now, for the better composition, I leave a bit of extra space on the left side of the frame. This not only avoids a static center look, but also gives us a room for text or label if you want to take this into a proper presentation shot. And just like that, we got a cinematic, large-scale shot that feels powerful and professional. Now it's time to add some decals and label to give the truck a professional and industrial look. I'm using a logo decal pack for this. First, I'll pick one of the decal. I think this looks good. Then isolate it in the view and move it down to match the truck surface. Then I'll rotate it on the X so it perfectly follows the angle of the plane. Once it's aligned, I'll push it slightly forward. That's cool. To project the detail onto the surface, I'll press D and hold Alt key and then click on this project option. Adjust it a bit and now it's cleanly placed. The logo is a little too bright, so let's tone it down. In the material property, I'll reduce the alpha value to 0.1, making it subtle but still visible. Next, I'll add a text label right beside the logo. Scale it down, position it carefully, and just like before, use Alt plus projection method to apply it. Then I'll reduce its alpha to 0.1 as well. Now the back of the truck still feels a little empty, so let's fill that negative space with some decal. I'll start by choosing a rectangle style decal. Maybe this looks good. Scale it up to a medium size, not too big, just enough to break up a flattened area. Now let's tweak the material so it's blend better with our truck color scheme. I'll open a material property, set the base color to as a matching tone, adjust the roughness to around 0.6 and making slightly lighter for contrast. For extra fine tuning, I'll open the subset base and tweak the color and roughness until it integrates perfectly with the rest of the design. Next, for the front side, I'm adding something functional. headlight or something. So I'll pick a circular emission decal, set the base color to a yellowish tone to match the theme. Then I'll open the subset base, slightly increase the roughness, and once it looks good, I'll mirror the decals to the other side. Just like that, we add a subtle but powerful details that makes the truck feel engineered and polished. So, we finished modeling, texturing, and also decal and placement. The only thing is missing right now is lighting. So, I'm gonna keep this step very simple but powerful, just by simply loading HDRI. Let me show you how I set up my HDRI. First, what you need to do is split the screen into half. Then, click on this type and choose shader editor. By default, it's set to object. Switch to world. And now, let me just delete all this shit. And by default, you only see the two node setup. One is a world output and another is a background. So to load the HDRI, what you need to do is, first thing, you need to make sure that you install the Node Wrangler add-on. So once that's been installed, you just select this background node, hold the control key and press T. This will add 3 nodes: environment texture node, mapping node, and also a texture coordinate node. Now, to load the HDRI, first thing what you need to do is to download the HDRI. I leave a link to download my HDRI in the video description. You can use any type of HDRI. You can use Studio Light HDRI, or you can use Hard Light HDRI, or you can use Soft Light HDRI. In the scene, I'm going to use a HDRI which is called Abandoned Slipway. This will give good lighting, and it's a soft light HDRI, and it's really suitable for like this kind of a mechanical and industrial stuff. Yeah, it's actually doing a great job. So now your scene will instantly improve just by loading this HDRIs. But still we need some improvement. I'm going to come to this rotation and set the Z rotation by 30. And for each time, I'm going to increment this with 30 to see which angle looks good. So just make sure that the HDRI is going to give the proper lighting to every part of your model. I think the 60 will looks better. So I just stick with the 60 because that gives a balanced lighting. Let me just switch to 35 to see how it looks. Yeah, 35 is perfect. So that's how you can just adding the lighting to your scene. Now choose your render engine to cycle, because a cycle gives you better shadows and more crisp render. Before we clicking on this render button, go to the compositor, and from there just make sure you have glare node and denoise node. So the denoise node will help you to prevent the noise from the render, and this glare node will allows you to add some bloom effect to your render. So if your render have some lighting, like if you have any emission, then this node will allow you to make it looks bloom and illuminate. So just make sure that you're connecting the denoise node and glare node to the compositor. And once everything is set up properly, just come here, click on this render button and render the image. And once you complete the render, you just need some Photoshop skills. So just spend a few minutes on editing the photo, just like adjusting the brightness, adjusting the contrast, and adjusting the exposure, and just playing around with the color grading, and just a very basic photo editing skill. So once you've done that, you're ready to upload your portfolio. Just render 3 to 4 shots with a different angle and then upload to your portfolio. So before you post your artwork on your social media account, don't forget to tag me in your post. I feature your work in my story and share it with the community. And if you follow this full course, you're not just finished the tutorial. You're gaining real skill and knowledge that will level up your hot surface modeling game. So once again, thanks for watching, and I wish you the best of luck of your upcoming projects. See you in the next one.